So today we're going to go through setting up our Revit models, MEP Revit models more specifically, for 2D and 3D DWG CAD exports. So all I've done so far is I've opened Revit 2014 and I've opened our electrical Revit model for the Vistaprint project. As soon as I open the file, first I open Revit first, because it usually responds quicker when you open Revit first and then the file that you're looking for from the drop-down menu up here, or this little open folder icon here. So usually this is the first window that you see when opening a model. It is telling me that the central model with the path where it was originally located cannot be found. So this is because typically architects and engineers work with their model in a work sharing fashion in their offices, and their models are hosted on a central server. So we know that we're not trying to tie into their central model located on their office server. So I'm just going to hit close. So now it'll continue to open my model. It's going to ask me about externally referenced files. I know there are 15 of them that Revit could not find. That's because the links that were originally associated with this Revit model are located on the architect or engineer's local server or local drives, and that's why it can't find them, which is fine. If I needed those files, they might be referencing the architectural file or a certain CAD floor plan or some other view, and then I can just ask for those. But I'm going to go ahead and hit ignore to continue opening the project. Okay, so now that I've opened the project, I have my properties viewer over here, my project browser over here, which tells me everything that's in this model. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize families because I'm not going to be editing any of their families. I'm going to go ahead and minimize drafting views, ceiling plans for now, roof. I'm going to go ahead and minimize all of these just for now. And I'll see my floor plans for every corresponding view. My viewer here, my window for what current view I'm looking at. And I'm going to go ahead and start by owning the work sets. I'm going to make this file editable because right now, as it currently stands, as we've just received it, it is not editable by me. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Collaborate up here at the top. And you'll see when I hover over the work sets area that it shows me that it's the electrical work set, that it's currently the active work set, and it's not editable. But I want to make it editable because I want to adjust what I see in these views and orient views to other views. So I'm going to start by clicking work sets. And again, it's referencing the central model at the architect's office, which is fine. We're not going to be using that. So I just hit close. So now I get this little work sets dialog box, and you'll see that it says editable and no for everything. So I'm going to go ahead and check off families, views, and project standards. I'm going to click in the top cell here under owner, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, holding down shift and clicking in the bottom cell. Now if I go over here to the right, I can click editable and my name will show up. As soon as I hit OK, a window will pop up saying that making the work set editable now might put your file at risk. So changes that I make are not going to connect back to the central server model, and that's fine. We don't want them to. So I'm just going to hit yes. And you're always going to hit yes when that comes up. So now that I've owned this model and I've gone through that step so far, I'm going to go ahead and hit save to make sure that I've saved the work that I've done so far. Okay, now that I've hit save, I'm going to start by adding my reference point in my floor plan views, because I'm going to be orienting a 3D view to my 2D views. So to find your 3D view first, just to check it out, go up to View in this ribbon here and click on the little house. 3D view. This is going to default and show you what the default 3D view is. Down here at the bottom, it's going to show me my scale, what my level of detail is. I'm going to go ahead and change that to fine because I like to see a lot of detail in the model. I'm going to change my view type to shaded because it shows me actual objects. And the rest I'm going to leave for now. If I zoom in, I'll notice really thick lines that surround my components or families within the model. So I'm going to go ahead to this top bar here and click thin lines because I don't need to see thick yellow lines surrounding every component. Something else I'm going to do is I'm going to hide these scope boxes, and these are just, you know, outlining a certain section of what the architect or engineer was working in. In this case, it was the electrical engineer, and I'm going to go ahead and hide these because I don't want them to show up as volumes when I export to a 3D DWG. Usually they don't, but sometimes they show up, and we don't want to have those in there. So if I hover over them, you'll notice that they turn blue, and anything you hover over will highlight in blue to show you exactly what you're clicking on or about to click on. So I'm going to start by just picking any one of these scope boxes, and it'll select it. It'll give me the option to modify it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and usually when you want this window here to come up for your options, you want to right click on the object that you're selecting. So I'm going to go up to hide in view, and I'm going to hide the category. I don't want to hide just that one element, but I want to hide the entire category of scope boxes. So now that I've done that, I have a clean 3D view. This is all of the electrical for the Vistaprint TI project. And now I'm going to start breaking it up floor by floor so that I have my level 1 electrical, my level 2 electrical, even though level 2 is not going to be used in this project, level 3, level 4, and so on. So now that I have my 3D view set up, I'm going to go ahead and click on my basement level power plan. Now it's not showing me anything because the basement is not in this project, but typically, with a core and shell project, you'll have basement and all levels will be visible. So I'm going to go ahead and click on level 1, see what that gives me. And level 1 gives me a decent amount of electrical. So first I'm going to start by adding a reference point. This reference point is decided on usually at the beginning of the project, and it's based on column line intersections and where those column line intersections line up according to the project, so that you might have a reference point that's outside of the building, for example, or in an area where nothing is sitting directly on top of it, but it's away from everything that's happening so it doesn't get lost, and everybody can easily find it. So for this particular project, we have decided to include our reference point at A1, and that was decided during the core and shell phase. So we're going to use that same reference point to carry over into the tenant interior project, so that we're all using the same reference point and we can easily reference the two projects together. So I just went back to the architecture tab. Now I can see from my my grid lines here that A1 falls over here in this south corner, this southwest corner. And I'll notice that the grid heads for these column lines are not showing up on these sides, these south and most westerly side of the grid, but they're showing up everywhere else. For our purposes today, I'm going to go ahead and make these grid heads show up so that I know and I can see very easily where A1 is. So I just clicked on the grid line here, and this little box will show up, and I'm going to click check to show the bubble, and that's going to show me where 1 is. I'm going to do the same for A, and I just happen to know that these are A1, but you might need to zoom out and zoom back in to select what it is, or if you just go ahead and click it, you'll quickly find out what those column lines are. So zooming into the intersection of A and 1, I'm going to go ahead and create a circle. And I'm going to do that by clicking Model Line up here, and I'm just in the regular Architecture tab. And then I'm going to choose a circle, because in Navisworks, when this goes into Navisworks, it'll quickly be able to reference the center of the circle, in CAD as well. I'm going to click on that intersection, and I'll drag it out to about 3, and hit escape. So now I have a circle at A1, and I made it 3 feet in diameter because it's easy to see, but it's not too big where it's overtaking the drawing. So now that I have my little circle at A1 and I'm on my level 1 power plan, I can go ahead and create a corresponding 3D level 1 view. I'm going to go ahead and click 3D views. I'm going to delete the one I already created, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my 3D view that I already had. And you'll notice now that when I double click on my 3D view, which was my default, my little circle automatically shows up at level 1, at A1. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on my view and go up to duplicate view and duplicate with detailing. I want to make sure that this same level of detail remains in my level 1 3D file. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and rename this 3D level 1 power, for example. And now that I have that set up, I'm going to go ahead and orient it to the 2D view. So now I'm in the copy of my 3D with my name on it, and I'm going to go to my view cube up here in the view space and right click anywhere on the view cube. When I right click on the view cube, this little box shows up with a few options. I'm going to click Orient to View, Floor Plans, because I want to orient the 3D to a 2D. And I'm going to go up to Level 1 Power Plan, because that's the view that I created my circle on, and that's the view range that I want to show up in my 3D view. As soon as I click that and let it go, it's going to take a second, and it'll show up with exactly what I'm looking for. So you'll notice that a scope box shows up again in this view automatically. I'm going to pull it out a little bit just to make sure that we're not clipping any aspects of the drawing, because I want to include everything on this floor that's relevant. And I'm going to do the same thing I did in my default 3D view and right click, hide in view. I'm just going to hide the element because there's only one in here. And you'll notice that, judging by the overall size of this building, that I'm only seeing half of the electrical for the first floor. That's because the rest of the electrical for the first floor was done in the core and shell phase, and that pertains to the cafeteria and servery. So this is all we're going to have for my level 1 electrical. And you know, this comes down to preference, but I don't want to see the lighting and electrical in the same file, because the subcontractors typically like to have that separated. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the lighting and duplicate this view here. So I have my electrical level 1, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it by right clicking, duplicate view, duplicate with detailing, and I'm going to right click and click rename. And now this one's going to be my 3D level 1 lighting. So now if I go back to power, I can get rid of all things lighting because that's going to be in my lighting file. So I'm just going to click VV on my keyboard, and that's going to bring up visibility and graphics override. Within this view, I can hide various model components, and you'll use this view visibility function quite a bit to hide various items that don't pertain to the view that you're trying to achieve. So in here, I'm just going to uncheck lighting fixtures to make sure all I have in this view are electrical fixtures. I'm going to click Apply and OK, and you'll notice that my lighting was removed. So now that I have my level 1 power 3D file, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it and just show you the types of things that you might see in this sort of file. I've got exit signs, some cable tray, some conduit, some receptacles, mechanical equipment, which should not be showing up, even though it says it's on the electrical phase. But because it's on the electrical phase, I'm going to leave it for now. It's better that they have more information rather than less. So I'm going to leave it for now, and I'm going to go ahead and export this as a 3D CAD file. So I'm going to start by going up to the big R here, where a lot of my, my file options are. And I'm going to click Export, or hover over Export, and you go up to CAD Formats, DWG. Now, you know, something you might wonder at this point is, how does it know to export a 3D DWG rather than a 2D DWG? Because I'm in a 3D view, it will automatically know to export in 3D, and when I go to a 2D view, it'll automatically know to export into a 2D DWG. So I'm going to click DWG. This is a window that always comes up every time you export. It's just telling me which view. I want the current view sheet only, and so I'm not going to change anything in this window, and I'm just going to click Next. Now it's going to ask you to go find where you would like to save this file. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Level 1 Elec that I already created, and because I already did this before, I'm just replacing the file that I already created. And I'm going to go ahead and down save this to a 2010, just in case some of the subs are working with an older AutoCAD software. Okay, and because I already created it, I'm going to replace it. So that's how you export a 3D DWG, and I'm going to go ahead and do that for every one of these levels, but for now all I will show is how to export the 3D level 1 lighting file, because I need to filter that out, and then how to export one of these 2D sheets. So you'll notice that now in my lighting file, our lighting view, my 3D lighting view, it shows all my electrical items and lighting items. Since I already exported all of my electrical items, I'm going to go ahead and hide all of that and just export lighting now. So what I can do is I can start by hitting VV on my keyboard, bringing up my view visibility dialog box, and I can uncheck electrical fixtures, mechanical equipment, because that showed up. And I'll just do that for now and hit apply. Now that didn't get rid of conduit, so I'm going to go to hide in view by right clicking on it, and I'm going to hide the category because I don't need to see the conduit in here. I'm going to do the same thing with cable tray. Hide in view category, and this is just another way to override your visibility graphics. What else do I have in here? I've got some conduit elbows. I'm going to hide those as well. Light, that's a light fixture, I want to leave that. It's a light fixture. Oh, but here's an exit sign. I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to hide that as well. And something you might be wondering at this point is why everything is sort of floating in space, or it appears to be, and it's not within the building, context of the building. If I were to link this file in using my reference point that I created to an architectural file using my reference point that I also created, these lights will be elevated, and hopefully, you know, if the architect drew it at the correct elevation, will be elevated correctly in the model. So because they used a linked model system and a work sharing system, all of their models are automatically linked, and we're just separating it, basically slicing and dicing the model for ease of use and for the subs, and then everything gets put back together basically in Navisworks. So everything will come in at the right elevation, you know, unless something was drawn on the floor, and then it would show up at 0, 0 or on the floor of that level. But for these files, they should show up because the architect and engineers work together in a work sharing environment. So I'm going to do the same thing I did for electrical, my 3D electrical view, CAD formats, DWG, and that's going to give me my 3D view in a DWG format. and I already did this with lighting. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that out to show you how to export a 2D view. So now that I've done my 3D view exports, I'm going to go back to my level 1 power plan and see what I've got going on here. I'm going to change my view settings to fine detail and shaded, because I just want to see how much I have working in here. So this is a good amount of information that I'd like to get to the subs in a 2D CAD format. So if I scroll down in my project browser, you'll notice that I have all of my sheets in here that correspond to the contract document set as well. I'm going to go ahead and click, let's see, level 1, electrical, lighting plan south, for example. E101B is what it'll correspond to on the contract set. And let's say a sub asked for that file in a 2D CAD format. So I'll notice here that if I click on the sheet, it's going to include the architect or engineer's title block as well. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the sub file here and export this. It's a 2D file. And you'll notice that if I click export, CAD formats, DWG in this view, it's telling me that it's a floor plan, and type is just a regular sheet and it's not 3D, so it knows. Click next, and now I can save this anywhere I want, but I want to include my sheet name. So that is how you export a 2D DWG file from a Revit model. So now I'm going to show you how to export an NWC. You're typically only going to do this for an architectural file, and I only do it because of the way that it shows the information in Navisworks as opposed to exporting an architectural file as a 3D DWG. But for now, I'm just going to show what that export function looks like, even though I'm not going to export a 3D level 1 lighting file as an NWC. I'm just going to show you how to get to an NWC. So let's say this was my level 1 architectural file, and I need to export it as an NWC for Navisworks. You'll notice that I have a number of different options here at the top in my Revit ribbon. And I'll go through those at another time. But for now, I'm going to stay on add-ins. You'll notice I have 3D PDF options, I have 2D PDF options, but right here is external tools, and we're working in Navisworks 2014. So I'm going to click on Navisworks 2014 from my 3D view, and that's automatically going to come up with this NWC file extension and give me an option to name the file. And it's as easy as that, and that's how to export an NWC file.